Ladies and gentlemen, boys and ghouls, to all of our non-binary friends, to everyone on the spectrum and in between, welcome back to the Shutter Show. My name is Ken Stachnik, and this is my co-host,
David Marlowe.
David, welcome back. How you doing, buddy?
Ken, I missed you.
It's been a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's been a little while. If everyone's noticing a little bit of a difference in the audio, that is because we are doing this virtually, bitches.
That's right. I am currently in Colorado, and David is currently in sunny Los Angeles. And as a result, we are recording this over the internet in the way that many podcasts are now during the pandemic. Well, now that the pandemic is coming out, but either way, that is why there's a difference in the sound quality this time. David, how are things? How have you been?
Things are good. Things are pretty good. The unfortunately, due to the insanely rising cost of lumber, the shop that I usually work at, the Scenic Shop, unfortunately has to work on a pretty much a very, very light crew of people, like a ghost crew, pretty much. So which means I have not worked there in a while, which has been pretty sad, but I have taken this opportunity to kind of just hop back into acting because I got all this fucking free time. And I've also remembered, I remember how annoying going through some of these breakdowns for Actors Access and LA Casting. And it's been interesting. It's the goal of some people to still offer meal and credit for a weekend's worth of shooting.
Yeah,
blows my mind. Like I am of the opinion that if you cannot afford to pay people at least like a semi-livable wage for the time that they're spending doing your shoot and putting the work in, then maybe you shouldn't do a movie, or you shouldn't do a project at all.
Or bare minimum, at least like gas too. Like but like it's got to be, I can't pay to come do work for you, man.
Yeah, like if it's for friends, like that's a little different. You're
friends
doing a
is
favor
different.
for friends is always different. But yeah, what about you, Ken? How you been doing?
Oh, not too bad. Just been settling in here in Colorado and getting myself all set up and trying to figure out what I'm going to do besides watch movies on Shudder.
Well, you've been fishing a lot.
I've been, I don't know if a lot, but I have.
Not a lot.
I have attempted to go on fishing. The podcast mascot Freddie Potatoes turns out does not like being on a leash while Dad is fishing. So there was only a little bit of fishing, but more fishing will be had. So I'm not too worried.
Oh yeah, and so any audience members might hear my dogs in the background every once in a while, or Katie walking across the room for whatever reason that she needs. But other than that, things are going well and excited to be back.
David, question for you. What movie did we watch for this week?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if people would know it. It's a very obscure movie. People are a big fan of werewolves, so maybe they might know about it. It's called American Werewolf in London.
The 1981 film directed by John Landis, the one insane.
Because, when I think of John Landis and his directing of Animal House, I think, God damn it, that man needs to make a werewolf movie.
Well, I mean, it definitely wasn't an easy path for him. It was his fourth movie. He had been very successful, obviously, with Animal House, and then Kentucky Fried Movie, and then the Blues Brothers, and he was able to finally kind of use all of that momentum in order to finally get American Werewolf in London made, which was actually a script that he wrote when he was 18 years old. It was, I believe, the first script that he had written. He was a production assistant on the movie Kelly's Heroes in 1969. And he ended up seeing a burial of a Roma person, and he was being buried head down at a crossroads. And John Landis was kind of taken aback by this. And so he asked one of the locals who couldn't speak the language, and kind of was like, what's up? What's he doing? And the guy went up and talked to them for a little bit and came back and kind of was chuckling to himself. And he basically said like, oh yeah, they're doing that because like apparently the guy had done, according to John Landis, some terrible crime, a rape or a murder, I guess. And he was being buried in this way so he wouldn't get back up again. And that kind of experience of being, I'm guessing, an American in a foreign land, because they were shooting, they were shooting in the Ukraine, I believe. It was behind the Iron Curtain. And so it was just this kind of like, yeah, as he described, like it's 1969. We landed on the moon that year, and these people were worried about zombies. And that dichotomy is, I think, what's really at the heart of American Werewolf in London, in that it is, I believe, the first werewolf movie that's not set like in a Gothic setting, that's not set in, I mean, like London is very Gothic, but it's not set in a castle. Yeah. It's not set pre-World War One.
Yeah, the closest thing that comes to that in this movie, I think, would be when they first get into this town, which was, what is it, the Lamb's Head?
Slaughtered Lamb.
Slaughtered Lamb. When they get to the town where the slaughtered lamb is, I think that's the closest that it gets to that sort of Gothic.
That's when it's definitely leaning into the most tropes. Landis talks about in the making of that scene is very much based on every Western you've seen, when a guy walks into a bar and everyone goes quiet and turns. This was just played a little bit more to the horror side of things. And then that's a trope you definitely see get recycled again and again and again, whether it's the Friday the 13th movies or The Hills Have Eyes. Even Cabin in the Woods does it, where, you know, they stop at a place to get some sort of directions and they get told, you know, you shouldn't be around these parts. Bad things happen. Oh,
don't want to go down that road.
No, not that road. No, the Jenkins boys went down there, never seen again.
Over there is built over an Indian burial ground.
Indeed.
So
what's interesting about this, I think, is the Landis says that he basically got 2 notes from every single person, one of the other. And that was either it was too funny to be scary or too scary to be funny. And I think one of the things that Landis does in this movie that's really commendable, and one of the first movies to really succeed with the comedy horror combination, is that it has both truly funny moments and truly horrific moments, but also truly horrifically funny moments. And I think that is one of the big things that a lot of these movies get wrong when they try to do horror comedy, where they just try and do jokes and then they try and do horror. When, to me, the secret sauce is when what's happening is both horrifying, but at the same time hilarious and over the top and crazy. And like the just as an example, like the dream sequence comes so out of nowhere, and you're just kind of like, Jesus Christ, the
Nazi wolves.
Oh my God, what is happening? Holy And it's like, but it's like it's also funny because it's such a hard left turn into absolute, utter, abject chaos. And same thing with the very end, when the car crashes all happen. There's a couple of times, like there's a lot of truly not only visceral, but moments where this barreling freight train of a monster just collides into somebody at like 100 miles per hour. It's like that perfect, one of the perfect scares in Final Destination, where one of the characters is just like, no, you don't understand. We're all screwed. This isn't going to go. And she just steps off the curb and just boom, immediately hit by a bus. And you're like, mwah, perfect. Because like, yeah, that's like that getting attacked by a wild,
deep vibe.
Well, like getting attacked by an animal like this, like it would be, that's what it would be. It would be like getting hit by a freight train from 90 miles per hour and you just didn't see it coming. It would just be like Though
I would argue more people at the end died from car crashes than actually died from a werewolf attack.
I would say it's probably about even. Because like there's at least 6 on the first night. And then the second night, there's at least probably a cop and the attendant for the porno theater. So that's at least 8. So yeah, I would say probably about 8 people died in that crash. And then about 8 people got it. Well, and then 9 if you include Griffin Dunn. Well, no, Griffin Dunn would have been killed by the other werewolf, to be fair. But
I don't know. Like I find this fascinating. It is really. I found watching this film fascinating. Because like when I posted that we were going to be doing this film as our first episode for our second season, I had a lot of really positive feedback, and the comments that I just saw over and over again is, "Oh my God, I love this movie. This movie is a classic." So it is very interesting, especially given that all I know is the sequel. So it's very interesting coming in and watching something that is a beloved cult classic, seeing that as a full-grown adult in the modern day. It's really interesting picking it apart because I don't have that nostalgia attached to it that everyone else seems to have with this film. And so I think ultimately after seeing this film, I was a little bit more critical, I think, than other people might be. So like, I am definitely like, I'm fascinated to learn a little bit more about like everything going into making this film. Like, I know the transformation scene. And I think without the transformation scene, this movie would not be as popular as it is. So like everyone knows about the transformation scene, even if you haven't seen this. So like for sure, that is a work of art.
All right, so let's take a step back for a second. So let's put ourselves in the seat of someone in 1981 watching this movie. This is not a time when you can go to Blockbuster. This is a time when you go and see a movie at the movie theater. And then if it plays in a revival, maybe you get to see it a few years later. Maybe several years down the road, you get to check it out on TV. So what this movie is going to do is nothing else. The transformation scene is something that's going to make you talk about this movie. And when we talk about this being an all-time banger transformation, not only is this the gold standard for any werewolf transformation, not only is this not only the bar you either clear and try and compete with, or that you purposely say, well, we're doing the opposite of that because we're not going to compete with it. We are talking about a movie special effects that are so good, they created the best makeup effects Oscar for it. When this and The Howling came out, the Academy was like, well, we clearly have to recognize this achievement. So we're going to have to create a special Oscar. And that's even more interesting when you realize that John Landis originally went to Rick Baker, who did the effects for this, and pitched him on it, but it took John a long time in order to raise the money. John met Rick Baker when they were making John Landis's, I believe it was his first movie, Schlock, which John Landis wrote, directed, and starred in as an ape. And while Landis was sitting there getting all of the ape makeup put on every day, he would talk to Rick Baker and pitch him the story of American Werewolf in London. And he talked about how he did not want the transformation scene to be like the old Wolfman movies. And he didn't want it to be a bunch of crossfades with Lon Chaney sitting in a chair and a little bit of hair growing and him just kind of dealing with it. John Landis felt that, if your body was going through this kind of transformation, it would be horrifyingly painful and you would be screaming and you would be going nuts, just like this happens. And Rick Baker was like, this sounds amazing. And then it took Landis a while to raise the money. And in the meantime, a guy named Joe Dante got a movie called The Howling up and on its feet and wanted Rick Baker to do the effects. And so Rick Baker was like, awesome. I've actually been thinking about doing a werewolf movie for an awful long time. And so Joe Dante got Rick Baker to sign on. And then a couple of weeks later, John Landis called and was like, hey, Rick, I finally got the money. And Baker was like, but I'm already doing a werewolf movie. And John Landis was not a happy camper by any stretch of the imagination and apparently said, quite a few words to Mr. Baker. So Mr. Baker decided to hand off the work on The Howling to his assistant, a little guy named Rob Bottin, who you might know as the special effects genius who went on to do The Thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's who the B team was, who then got handed over to The Howling, and then Rick Baker went over and did American Werewolf in London, and then Rick Baker ended up winning the award. And while I love the transformation in The Howling, to me, there's still nothing better than this. I watched this the other night with the person who owns the house that I'm currently staying in at the moment, and he had never seen it. And
he'd never seen it either.
He had never seen it at all, and he didn't really. All he knew about it was like it was a good werewolf movie, but he had almost no context. And when the transformation scene was done, he was like, "Wow!" Like that was. How did they do that? Man, that looked so good. And I was like, yeah, and there's no digital effects. That is all 100% in camera. That is every old school, great, dirty trick in the book. And also a combination of the, old tricks and basic puppetry, but then also at the same time, the new application of a new kind of plastic.
Like air bladders, yeah.
Well, like so some air bladders, but apparently one of the bigger things was this particular kind of plasticized latex, which got incredibly stretchy, but still had the right texture of skin without it ripping. And so that's also part of the thing. The thing that made this different is finally just the work, the materials themselves finally had kind of caught up with some of the lifelike stuff that they want to do. And Rick Baker got about 6 months to do the pre-sculpting and pre-casting and kind of getting everything up and going. And one of the things that Rick Baker complained about was like they'd spend 4 or 5 months on one of these puppets or one of these rigs, and then they get it on set and they'd shoot it for like 5-10 minutes, and then they were done. And Rick Baker would be like, but we worked on it for so long. Couldn't you just could we shoot a little bit more? And he's like, does it do anything else? No. Well, then we got it. Moving on, man. I don't know what to tell you. And so, that's where.
That's one of the big complaints that Patrick Stewart has about just compared like acting in film to acting in theater is like, when you're acting in film, the moment comes and it goes so quickly, like all these hours of preparation and work that you put in, and like all the love that you put into a role or the effects that go into a film, like in less than an hour, sometimes like you shoot it and it's done. And but like, luckily in this transformation, like certainly like it speaks for itself. And like, I'd seen the transformation scene. I hadn't seen anything else in this movie. So like I at least had the context of the transformation. I'm like, okay. But like hadn't seen the attacks that happened after, hadn't seen I did not get to see any of the corpse makeup or the corpse scenes, which I thought were brilliant.
Oh yeah. Griffith Dunn this is his first movie, and he barely auditioned for it. It was just kind of John Landis just kind of loved like just the energy between Naughton and Dunn. And what's interesting is like David Naughton was mostly known for like I believe it was Dr. Pepper commercials. And I guess John Landis just kind of really liked his energy and then thought that him and Griffith Dunn kind of reminded him of his friend, or like him and his friends when they were like 16, 17, around the age that he kind of felt like these guys were going in here. And that's how they ended up getting set up. And then what I think he did that was really smart was then when it came to the other two main characters in this movie, both the nurse and the doctor, he went with two kind of seasoned professionals with Jenny Agutter and John Woodvine, who, when you look up their credits, are have just worked on a ton of stuff. They're consummate professionals. They're going to show up every time, and they have, I would say, the harder acting work to do in these roles, because I think it's easier to play the werewolf, to play the guy who's like, oh no, am I going to become this monster? I think there's a lot of fun getting to play the corpse that is Griffith Dunn, and there's a lot, and it's basically trying to be chummy with this guy that, from everything that I've read, these two guys literally just totally got along in real life, so their chemistry is just real. both the doctor and the nurse have the much harder part of coming to the realization that there is a werewolf in London. And when Jenny has to, or when the nurse, has to tell David that she loves, she loves him, even though he's like a wolf at that time. But you believe her. Those to me, that's the much harder role to pull off and to nail, is the treating the crazy serious rather than the reveling in it, as I think that both Naughton and Dunn do.
Yeah, no, she commits to it, and again, I'm looking at her work, and again, she was in well-known films like Logan's Run. She was in Child's Play 2, which oh gosh, I'm trying to remember which writer it was, but he was a co-writer for American Werewolf in London, and he was penning the sequel for American Werewolf in Paris, which apparently they were going to, like, originally they were considering doing the first film in Paris because they were having difficulty with locations.
Well, so originally, John Landis knew that when he was doing the research on werewolves, he discovered that the two places where werewolves, like where werewolf lore and mythology, and like looking like, all right, in much the way that, like, if you want to look into witch trials, you're going to go look at Salem. Well, it turns out when you wanted to look at werewolf trials, you were going to look at either Wales or France. And so John Landis is like, well, I don't speak French, so let's go try Wales. And apparently they had some trouble getting some of the locations here and there. And then finally, they were able to get a production manager who, from what I understand, had some sort of connection to the royal family. Because if you notice at the end of the movie, after the credits roll, they do like and by the way, congratulations to Prince Charles and Diana on your wedding. And then also, nobody in this movie is based on anything in reality, so don't try and sue us. That, like, that weird, like, right along that is, by the way, so that seems like especially because Prince Charles would be the Prince of Wales, it seemed like a real, somebody was like, well, your request would go a little bit farther, perhaps, if you said something nice about His Majesty, perhaps. I don't know the specifics, but that's therefore, I'm guessing, a reason. That was there to grease somebody's palm, to make somebody look good in front of somebody else, somebody who could just lean in and be like, Lord Taylor. Actually, I don't know why I said Lord Taylor, but anyway, Lord McGillicuddy. There we go. That's what we'll go with. With this filmed here, and if you notice at the end, they say something nice about the royal marriage. You're welcome. So,
yeah, it's, yes.
Let's see here. I think before we get too much more into this, one of us, and by one of us I mean you, need to give the people at home a quick synopsis of what happens in American Werewolf in London without being spoiler, etc. Although spoilers, He becomes a werewolf, and American Werewolf in London.
Well, you're not too far off, Ken. Well, no, I would. My synopsis has to go as follows: two Americans going on a 3-month backpacking trip, stop off in a tiny little British town, or is it a town in Wales?
I believe Wales is where it is supposed to be.
Okay. So yeah, either way, they stop off in a tiny little town, and little do they know this tiny little town happens to have a little bit of a werewolf problem.
Itty bitty teeny tiny.
Itty bitty teeny tiny. Doesn't even kill both of them, just kills one of them. And the people there obviously want to keep it hush hush, and so they kick them out of the bar because they're not too friendly. And yeah, the werewolf attacks them, kills the main character's best friend, and bites him. And he wakes up in a hospital, flirting with this sweet little nurse, while at the same time going a little crazy because he sees his dead friend everywhere, who's telling him to kill himself. And so,
let's be clear. So Griffith Dunn comes back as a zombie that only David Naughton can see. Exactly. And tells him specifically, look, man, I am stuck in the astral plane, walking in limbo until the bloodline of the werewolf is broken. And that means, my friend, you have to kill yourself because I am really tired of talking to corpses, and you are going to kill again. You are going to get out of control when the moon is full, and there's going to be more blood on your hands and more people walking in limbo. So I need you to kill yourself, buddy. And you can imagine, that's some hard news to hear.
Yeah, and everything goes as prophesized, and people die. There is a romance that ensues, but at the same time, killing yourself is tough work, and doesn't do it, and ends up turning into a werewolf a second time, and more chaos ensues, more people die, and that's pretty much the film.
I would say that's it. Definitely, kind of in a nutshell.
Nutshell.
Yes, there's a lot of great points and little bits here and there. There are a lot of. This movie to me is I think a collection of beautiful touches that I really like. Whether it's the moment in the zoo where the little boy runs out and says, a naked American man stole my balloons. Whether it's let's see here. Whether it's the killing that happens in the tube. Whether it's like one of my let's see here. The so many nice little touches and flourishes that make the characters seem real, whether it's the improv between David Naughton and Griffith Dunn, where it's so clearly that they're friends who are telling each other jokes, whether it's the playful flirting that happens between Jenny and David, whether it's just the little dangly bit of flesh on Griffith Dunn's makeup that just kind of slightly shakes every time that he's talking, is just it's just one of the many things that make this movie really, really sing. Now, I will say that there are things in this movie that don't quite land. I would argue that the ending is a little rushed and chaotic. Yes. That said, basically they got to close Piccadilly Circus twice for about 5 minutes, one night, like one Sunday night to Monday morning. And literally they had to prearrange almost that entire car wreck to both happen in about a minute and a half. And then they had to clear the entire intersection along with the bus in about 5 minutes. And so they built a special bus with a special like swing away carriage at the bottom. So they could basically like do 360s in that bus all day long. And what's extra cool is if you happen to know your stuntmen, you will notice about 3 down in the credits, one of the stuntmen in this movie is a little guy named Vic Armstrong. Now, you would know Vic Armstrong as the stunt double for most of James Bond. He was the stunt double for Indiana Jones. If it was the 70s or 80s or early 90s and some fool did something crazy for real, chances are Vic Armstrong was that guy, or was
he the cop getting crushed by the car?
I know one of the stuntmen is actually John Landis. John Landis gets tossed through a glass door. I believe Vic Armstrong is the guy who goes. I know Vic Armstrong was doing the driving on the bus, the 360 buses. He might have gone out the window too, but I think he might have just been the stunt driver on that one. I know on the making of, he talks specifically about like what was great about that bus. And he's like, oh yeah, man, I could just do 360s in that thing all day long, which, that sounds pretty cool, doing 360s in a double-decker London bus.
Which, speaking of well-known people who just kind of pop up out of nowhere, someone else who I did not expect to see, Frank Oz.
Oh yeah, a little bit of Fozzie Bear showing up.
Playing a little bit of Fozzie Bear, a little bit of Yoda. He just shows up for a scene, just as an annoying doctor.
No,
a lawyer.
He's the person from the ambassador who's there to let him know that his parents have been notified, and that he has allowed the good people at Scotland Yard to talk to him. Also, David, I have a question for you.
Yes.
This is a legit question, and anybody in the audience, feel free to also answer me. So why are the British police in London called Scotland Yard? Yeah,
You know,
right? Much like question 2 for you, other things that don't make sense to me. Why are the three musketeers known for sword fighting? They're musketeers. They should be very good with muskets. Otherwise, they would be like swords-a-tears. Or
do none of them fire a musket?
I mean, they do
in the novel.
Yes, they do. But like they're called musketeers. It means like their primary thing should be muskets. But nobody ever talks about the dope gunfights in the Three Musketeers. Every one of the Three Musketeers movies is all about dope sword fighting.
Except for that sweet Mila Jovovich adaptation.
Whoa. You walk that back right now. That movie rules. That movie rules.
I didn't say it didn't rule. Excuse me, sir.
Okay.
That movie is wonderful.
Off topic, but I would argue that the Three Musketeers, as a unofficial franchise, is maybe the most solid execution of any source material, because I would argue that the silent movie version is dope. Like the Douglas Fairbanks version is dope. The 60s version with Oliver Reed and Michael Rourke is dope. The Charlie Sheen version with Kiefer Sutherland is dope. The Three Musketeers with Christoph Waltz and Mila Jovovich is dope. Even Musketeer is pretty good. And The Man in the Iron Mask with Gerard Depardieu and Gabriel, the one from Miller's Crossing, is also super good. Like there's almost no bad adaptation of the Three Musketeers. And that, for like, if you look across the history of movies, there's almost nothing that's got that stellar of a batting average. But we're not talking about Musketeers. We're talking about werewolves.
Yes, I know. We nerd tangent. But yeah. Oh God, I absolutely love it.
A D'Artagnan nerd tangent.
But yeah, and so okay. Because I feel like if I don't give context for this, there's going to be a lot of people listening to this they're gonna rage quit because I keep wanting to talk about American Werewolf in Paris. I need to give everyone context for this. So, like when this movie came out, I was maybe, oh God, what grade was I in?
When American Werewolf in London came out? No, you were a
no. When American Werewolf in Paris came, I wasn't even a fetus when London came out. No, when Paris came out in 1990. I want to say 1997.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it came out in 1997. And by then, I was just stoked to get to see an R-rated movie.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, as a child, you have no context for what's good and what isn't. You're just, all you recognize is, oh, I don't usually get to watch this kind of stuff. This is fun. And so I watched it several times as a child. And I like to where some scenes I do genuinely remember. And I do remember actually really liking the soundtrack to American Werewolf. There's a great Bush song in there too. Like it's fantastic.
To be fair, that is something that it has in common with the American Werewolf in London score and soundtrack. Is the American Werewolf in London like contains every great like song that contains the word moon in it, to the best of my knowledge. And it's all like, I mean, it's all really good performances of it, whether it's Sam Cooke or Van Morrison, Creedence Clearwater. Like it's a great collection.
And I watched it today. I rewatched Paris today, and now I'm going to say this: it is not a good movie.
No.
It is certainly not a good movie. I will, however, say there are good parts about it. Kind of like what you were saying about how the humor in London is spot on, and he strikes this great balance in the humor and the horror, and how everything seems very natural. Like there's the same amount of humor in Paris. It just doesn't know how to hit those comedic beats. And there's even some parts in it that are genuinely funny on paper, but the way that they're delivered is not good. I would also say that in the sequel, Paris, the CGI in some parts of this actually hold up pretty well. Like the lead actress, oh gosh, what's her name? Julie Delpy, who's also a great actress.
Yeah.
Her transformation scene, while quick, actually pretty impressive. And and the difference, of course, between the two films is most of this was CGI, and CGI hadn't quite reached its peak at that point because it's 1997. But for the time that this came out, some of the CGI effects actually very impressive for the time. And I think that's why they went that route, is because it was so new. They kept wanting to experiment with it, see how real they could get it. But the difference is that
if you
it looks good in a dark room.
If you think about it coming from John Landis' perspective, the first movie he made, he rolled the dice on, this new experimental kind of makeup effects and pushing the cutting edge of what was possible. And I can definitely see the thought process behind that, bringing CGI and maybe that being able to take things to the next level. Now, that said, as a lot of us have learned, CGI is incredibly powerful at some things, but also tends to fall down in other places. And just like in the early days of prosthetics, there was some amazing work and there was also some pretty dodgy work.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that American Werewolf in Paris had, a combination of both.
Yeah.
Stuff
and there are actually some good werewolf puppets in the sequel. There's a little bit of puppet work that's in there, and the overall production design for the werewolves themselves is good. Like, there is a good movie in that sequel. It's just and just now, like, reading over some of the pre-production hell that it went to. It was originally going to be written and directed again by Landis. But unfortunately, it got the script that he wrote, the first draft, the studio absolutely hated it. And so he went in, as he quotes, they hated it. They hated the script. It was really odd. It was not conventional in any way. They were horrified. And I thought that was a good reaction to a horror script, but they were aghast. They thought it was too outre. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And by the end, he's like, okay, when they move forward with somebody else's, okay, I don't want to know, just send me a check.
Wow.
And originally the person who went on to John Lafia was originally going to write and direct it. Mm-hmm. But then he picked up Child's Play 2, which also the actress from London, Jenny, what's her name? Jenny Agutter, who plays Nurse Alex Price. Yes. She ended up being in Child's Play 2 as well, which I thought was a nice little, cool little coincidence. And now the writer who eventually went on to write the sequel, Tom Stern, also went on to had written a little film that I'm trying to find. For the life of me, I cannot find it. I cannot find a version of it because I want us both to watch it together. It's Freaked. He's the guy who wrote Freaked.
Okay. Yeah, no, I've heard of Freaked, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it looks crazy bananas. I can't wait to check it out. It looks so bizarre. But yeah, it has a lot of interesting things about it, and it attempts to do certain things, and some things I think it does do well. I don't think it's as bad as people
It's not as bad as its reputation is.
Exactly. Its reputation. It's the same reason why, it's not on the same level. But for example, I don't understand everyone's anger at the movie Predator 2. I don't get it, because to me, that movie is amazing. Not necessarily from a quality standpoint, but just from not even a camp standpoint. I like it. I just thought it was fun. But again, that's another movie I saw when I was about the same age when I saw this one.
As we've talked about on the show before, there's a huge difference between the quality of something and your enjoyment of it. And you can both enjoy something that isn't of quality, and you can also not enjoy something that is incredibly high quality. That is definitely like, those are both things that can exist. You can, you can go to, if you don't like foie gras, then it doesn't matter how perfect the foie gras is. You're not gonna like it. And also at the same time, no one's gonna argue that a deep fried Twinkie is good for you or any kind of culinary achievement, but on a certain kind of day in a certain kind of place, it can be pretty tasty. Just like the way that a hot dog is delicious at a baseball park, but a 5-course meal is not exactly something you want to try to be eating at the stadium. Your time and place goes a long way to whether or not you enjoy a movie. I just
don't understand who doesn't want to. I just don't understand who doesn't want to see the Predator take out a drug cartel.
Well, see, that's the thing I don't
sounds
think
like good, wholesome fun to me.
Yes, but that's because the people aren't doing that. They're comparing it to Predator 1, or they're upset because Arnold Schwarzenegger isn't in it, and that's what they wanted to see. Or they missed the jungle setting. Like most of the time, a lot of complaints for sequels that are not just rehashes of the original movie are it's people complaining.
It's a Halloween 3 complaint.
Yes, the problem is I was told, that this was going to be a different thing, and that for me, I think one of the great tragedies of modern critical writing on films is how few critics actually go back and do reevaluations or watch a movie for a second time. And I totally understand why. I totally understand. When you have to watch 10 or 12 movies a week and you have to write about all of them immediately, you don't always have time to go back and let the movie play out on the movie's terms. There have been a lot of movies for me where I have gone in expecting something else and then getting the movie that they made and being kind of on my back foot a little bit and being like, all right, that was weird. That's not like, and it's exactly like, that wasn't the meal I sat down and expected. But then the next time I watch it, and now that I know what I'm getting into, suddenly
it's better when you're expecting it.
Yes, exactly. Just like, some spicy food, like some, an unexpected spice in your food isn't necessarily bad, but it can catch you off guard and kind of leave you in one of those like, oh, I need some water. Okay.
Yeah.
No,
if you drink a beverage,
ghost pepper. I thought it was more of like a jalapeno hot, and that's hot.
Yeah. If you drink a beverage expecting water, but turns out you're drinking a shot of vodka, it's going to be a little unpleasant. But
or even if it's just Sprite, if you reach for water and you get Sprite, you might be like, but that's only because you were expecting plain and you got sugar.
Yeah. Jarhead is a great example. Like Jarhead is arguably, in my opinion, a good film.
It is.
But when I first saw it, I was horribly disappointed because that is not the type of movie that I was told that I was getting.
You were told you were going to go see a war movie about soldiers doing soldier stuff. And instead you got a movie about people waiting around to do soldier stuff, and how frustrating it can be for you to spend a year of your life being trained to pull the trigger only to be sent to some place where the war is over almost before you got there.
Yeah. Which at the same time, how do you market a movie like that?
I mean, you market it like you market it by saying very clearly what it is on the tin, which is like an anti-war movie about not fighting and the Gulf War, but that doesn't sell tickets. And like, that's not what the marketing people care about. So the marketing people do what the marketing people always do and sell the movie that they wish it was and not the movie that it actually is. And then surprise, surprise, people get upset. But in the movie business, it doesn't matter because they already have your money. Now, that said, things are starting to change now because with the streaming model, I mean, they kind of have your money, but you also need to click through. You also need to watch the whole movie for them to consider it to be a success. And it's very easy to just wiggle your little finger and suddenly back out of it. When I was growing up, God help me, I'm sorry, I'm old, but we used to go to a little thing called the Blockbuster. And that was a.
It's okay. I understand. I worked at one of the last Blockbusters in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
It's Oh, I get it. And
Yeah.
I'm like, and I like, you know, and I grew up with video stores too, and like I miss video stores. I miss
Yeah,
that
but like
experience.
if you
of going
didn't
there.
like the movie, you had to like physically go all the way back to the store, and they would exchange it. Like if you watch 30 minutes of the movie and you bring the movie back to the back to the store within an hour, and you're like, I hate this, they'd rent you something else. They didn't care because it's just a rental. But like now you just wiggle your thumb. Then at least I had to go back and get on my bike and ride a couple of blocks to the store, and then go talk to a person and find another movie and swap it out. And now it's just
God forbid it didn't play.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, yeah, or if you didn't rewind it, the tape before returning it. But anyway, we are dating ourselves, and let's see here. Actually, looking at the time and looking at things, David, do you have anything else you really want to mention about the movie? I mean, other than telling people like whether or not like this is a movie you need to see. If you are a horror fan, you need to see this just to see the transformation scene, just to put this in your book of movies to compare other things to have your zeitgeist informed, so that way you are in the know and you know what the cool kids are talking about when they're talking about the best werewolf transformations or transmogrifications, really of any kind, of all time in cinema.
Oh yeah, and there's a reason why it's because what's the name of because they Shudder just released a sequel to their documentary. Oh God, what the hell was it called? I think it's In Search of Darkness is the name of it. Oh yeah, In Search of Darkness. Where they in the sequel they literally talk about it's just the 80s. And how this film is part of that required viewing that really helps put across to you just how special the 80s were. And this kicks it off. Like this is only like this is like 1981. Like this was released around the same time that The Howling was. So I would definitely say that this is required viewing. I enjoyed this film quite a bit. Having just watched it for the first time, I think I enjoyed much more of the first half than I did the second half. And I do think it ends a little abruptly. But outside of that, it's a great piece of film. I heavily enjoyed it. And I anyone who hasn't seen it, do yourself a favor, turn off the lights, sit down and enjoy.
Also, something we should mention before we get to the end here, there is the controversy with John Landis. And if you want to find out more about it, I suggest the Cursed film series that's on Shudder. John Landis did get Vic Morrow and 2 kids killed on the set of Twilight Zone by doing stunts illegally after hours. And it definitely...
It does not surprise me that the son of John Landis is a walking, breathing piece of shit.
Also, there is the sex pest Max Landis problem, or alleged sex pest Max Landis problem. Yes, the Landises are problematic. That is unfortunately something that is becoming more prevalent as we move farther along in society and we re-examine the people who made art before us. Some of them, unfortunately, do not live up to the praise of their artistic achievements. And John Landis is unfortunately one of those people. He definitely created some amazing stuff, but you can't get away.
And he got away with it. Because he went to it was something that he went to trial for, and he ultimately wasn't convicted.
Mm-hmm.
And so got to go on after breaking the rules and getting 3 people, including 2 of those people being children, killed.
Yep.
Got to go on and continue making movies.
Yeah, which is just one of those. It is what it is. So we should mention it, and we did. We're not condoning those actions, obviously.
Absolutely not.
It's just some context for something that happened later on in this guy's career. But David, I guess that means it is time for us to travel in time and for you to check out 2 trailers. And with the success that our announcement of doing American Werewolf in London got, I decided that this week it would be really cool if we watched 2 trailers for 2 other classic films, and we do another classic next week. So I have chosen The Wicker Man, not the Nicolas Cage version, the original version, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. again, the original, not the remake. Although we would probably talk about the remake some if we do Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because there's some interesting stuff there where there is some interesting things in the Wicker Man remake, but that movie is cuckoo bananas crazy, and there's a reason it's not on Shudder.
Yeah.
Now, I can see the disappointment in your eyes, David.
Well, no, it's interesting too, because Texas Chainsaw Massacre is another strangely complicated franchise.
Oh, yeah, as a franchise, very complicated.
In terms of the order that I have watched them. And it's like literally the first Texas Chainsaw movie that I've ever watched was Next Generation with not Reese Witherspoon. Reese Witherspoon. Oh, Renee Zellweger, yeah. Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger.
Good times.
And then I literally then I went backwards from there, and then it was the one with Viggo Mortensen. So you know what?
Okay.
Yeah, let's okay. You know what? Let's watch the trailers. Let's see where we're going.
All right, David, is the door open for you? Right? Yeah, I got a little TARDIS action going. That's right. Long distance time machine now.
Oh, damn. You made some corrections.
Just go ahead and step in, my friend.
Oh, it smells like a new car in here.
Okay. I know, exactly. Right. I got that pine scent going. All right. All right. Well, David, we are back from the future to now.
Oh, man. You know, Ken, I poo-poo your idea about me choosing.
What?
You know what?
How dare you? How dare you, sir?
You know what, sir? Our listeners deserve to choose.
Fine. I see how it is.
God damn it. Let them eat cake.
Let them eat cake. Let them run. Are you saying we're going to have a poll on our Instagram where the listeners at home can vote on what we're going to do next week?
That is exactly what I'm saying. It's strangely detailed, and you predicted that very well. But yes, that is exactly what I'm saying.
Well, then I guess this is a call to action to go and check out our Instagram. David, where can people find our Instagram? I mean, other than on Instagram, obviously.
Oh, well, strange that you might mention that, because I happen to run our Instagram page at Shudder_show.
And so you can find our Twitter at Shudder Show, no underscore.
You can. Yeah, exactly. So yes, go up in the next day or so. I'm going to post a poll, and then we'll let you all know which one wins. So yeah, the choice is between the OG Wicker Man and the OG Texas Chainsaw. So we're going to have a classic off.
Indeed, I'm excited. David, where can the good people at home find you on the interwebs?
Well, they can also find me on Instagram at _DW Marlowe. It's been so long since I pitched myself. But yes, you can find me at _DW Marlowe. And yeah, where I get up to my regular musings and occasionally my fun woodworking stuff. And yeah, as I dive into acting a little bit more again, I might post a little bit about that as well.
Fantastic. And you can find me on Instagram and on Twitter at Ken Stachnik, KenStachnik. You can find Freddy Potatoes, the mascot for the podcast, on Instagram as well at Freddy Potatoes. And you can find us on all the places where pods are casted. And also, if you are looking for something else to do to help out the show, we would love it if you went on to literally any place where you can post a review of what you think of the show. Hopefully it's positive. If not, maybe don't. But if you do like the show, please say some nice things about it, because it helps us spread the word, get things out there, build an audience, and get more interesting people and movies to talk about on the show. So I guess,
or if you want to post about if you have anything constructive, any kind of either advice or things that you might want to hear or see, let us know as well. We also have a Gmail account as well. So
yeah, shuttershow@gmail.com. Hit us up if you got any questions. But until then, I guess we will talk to the lovely people of the internet next week. David, good night. Good luck. I'll miss you. And of course,
go fuck yourself.
Good night, everybody.